The white tents had already been pitched, and the scent of jollof rice danced through the air like a mocking spirit. Amaka stood under the canopy in her peach lace, hands trembling as the village women ululated and praised her beauty. It was her traditional wedding. Or, at least, it was supposed to be. The elders had gathered. Her mother, Mama Nwosu, had bragged all week that her daughter was finally marrying into a wealthy family. Guests whispered, some with envy, some with admiration. But inside Amaka, a storm brewed. Cunnel hadn't called all morning. His phone was switched off. Still, she smiled, her makeup already cracking beneath the stress. Then, like a scene from a cruel movie, a Range Rover pulled up, not to celebrate, but to shatter her world. Cunnel stepped out in a white senator outfit. But instead of heading to the elders with palm wine and smiles, he stood by the vehicle, surrounded by friends and a woman no one recognized. She was light-skinned, dripping in gold, her nails long like talons. That's when Cunnel raised his voice and said the words that would haunt Amaka for years. I came to inform you all that I can't marry Amaka. I'm engaged to someone else now. This was a mistake. Gasps rang out like gunshots. The compound went silent before chaos erupted. Amaka staggered backward, the ground slipping from beneath her feet. Women rushed forward, some to catch her, others to hurl insults at Cunnel. Her mother screamed. Her uncles threatened violence. But Amaka stood still, paralyzed. The man she had loved for 4 years, whom she had lent money, nursed through typhoid, and kept faithful for, had just humiliated her before her entire bloodline. Later that night, Amaka sat in a bathroom, still wearing her ghillie, the sweat and tears mixing into a bitter taste on her lips. She replayed the scene 1,000 times, asking herself what she had done wrong. Was it because she didn't have light skin like the other woman? Was it her humble job as a nurse? Or had her love never been enough? Her phone buzzed with messages, some from friends, some from those who had always envied her. This is why women shouldn't trust men. Sorry dear, God will do it. Huh. USEF, how you know she say the guy no really love you. She threw the phone away and buried her face in her hands. In that moment, her soul shattered like cheap china dropped from a rooftop. The next morning, Amaka boarded a rickety bus back to Ajagunal. Her bridal boxes rattled beside her, like a cruel reminder of a life she never got to live. The conductor insulted her for not having change. Her ghillie was stuffed into a nylon bag. Her once pristine makeup now stained the collar of her blouse. Passengers stared, murmuring. Some had seen the viral clip already, her mother wailing and falling to the ground, her aunties dragging pots of soup back into the kitchen in disgrace. When she finally arrived at her mother's house, she stood outside for minutes, unsure if she even had the strength to knock. It wasn't the first time life had mocked her, but this time it came with a punch to the soul. Mama Nwosu didn't offer her a hug. So after everything, "Nah so he dump you like wrapper," she hissed, tying her faded wrapper tighter around her waist. "Did I not warn you that this your big eyes will ruin you? All those nights you went to sleep smiling like Mumu. All those times I told you to secure him well. Did you even kneel to serve him like wife material? You failed us, Amaka." Her siblings watched from the corner of the room, mocking smirks hidden behind plastic chairs. No one asked if she had eaten. No one asked if she was okay. She dragged her bags into the cramped room she once shared with her sisters, and collapsed on the worn-out mattress that smelt of dust, sweat, and old dreams. She wanted to disappear. But poverty doesn't give you that luxury. You rise and work, or you die forgotten. The following week, she returned to her clinic. Her supervisor, Nurse Funk, handed her a broom. "Clean the back room. Your drama was on every blog. Patients don't want scandal here." She didn't argue. She swept. She mopped. She held crying babies and changed old men's catheters. At night, she swallowed Gary with cold water. Her salary barely covered food, let alone healing. Her mother refused to speak to her unless it was to remind her what a disgrace she had become. The silence between her and the world deepened until even her thoughts began to echo. Until one day, her friend Ifunanya dragged her out for lunch in a modest restaurant, trying to pull her back to life. The restaurant was modest, just off Bode Thomas Street, with worn-out leather chairs and the scent of pepper soup filling the air. Ifeanyi tried to cheer her up with gossip and laughter, but Amaka barely responded. She stirred her Fanta absently, eyes sunken, lips cracked. She hadn't worn makeup in weeks. Her once glowing skin was now dull with stress. She just wanted to eat and disappear. But fate had other plans. The bell above the door jingled. Amaka glanced up, and her heart stopped. Kunal walked in, holding hands with the same light-skinned woman who destroyed her wedding. They spotted her immediately, and the smirk that grew on the woman's face could slice bread. Kunal laughed loudly, dragging a chair 2 tables away from Amaka. "Babe, look-o, that's the one I told you about. The one who thought lace and rice would make me stay." The woman chuckled. On, is this the same one that trended for getting dumped? You're even prettier online." Laughter erupted from their table. Amaka froze. Her palms trembled. Her throat tightened. Ifeanyi whispered, "Let's go." But Amaka couldn't move. Then, in a single breath, without thinking, she stood, looked around, and saw him. A well-dressed man, alone, sipping tea, and reading something on his iPad. She walked over, heartbeat wild. She tapped his shoulder. He turned, calm eyes meeting hers. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking with desperation. "Pretend to kiss me. Just once." She didn't explain. She didn't even know why she said it. Maybe she just wanted to take back a piece of her dignity. The man blinked once, and then slowly stood. With the quiet grace of a man who feared nothing, he pulled her gently forward. His hand touched her cheek, and without a word, he leaned in and kissed her. Softly, calmly, respectfully. Time froze. The restaurant gasped. Kunal choked on his drink. Amaka closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, the ache in her chest paused, even if just for 5 seconds. When the kiss ended, the man didn't speak. He simply sat back down, his expression unreadable. And Amaka, still breathless, grabbed Ifeanyi and rushed out like her life depended on it. Damien Okonkwo sat still after the kiss, watching the back of the woman as she rushed out of the restaurant like a frightened bird fleeing a burning cage. His hand lingered on the side of his face where her breath had touched, warm and trembling. He wasn't the kind of man who entertained random encounters. In fact, most people barely got close to him, especially after the betrayal that nearly cost him his life and his billion-dollar company. Yet something about her eyes, desperate, broken, burning with shame, had pierced the walls he'd spent years building. He didn't know her name, but her pain felt familiar. He recognized it. The loneliness, the need to silence those who mock you, the desire to reclaim a shred of dignity, even if it's through madness. He should have looked away, but he didn't. He kissed her not because she begged, but because in that moment he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man, and she was just a woman trying not to drown. He didn't move from his seat for a long time. Slowly, he lowered the iPad he had only been pretending to read. Across the restaurant, Kunal and his fiancée were still in stunned silence. He watched them, how quickly their arrogance faded when they saw that kiss. But he wasn't interested in them. His thoughts remained with her. He wanted to know her story. What kind of woman approaches a complete stranger and pleads for such a thing? Not out of lust, but sorrow. It wasn't vanity that pushed her, it was survival. Something in him twisted. That familiar guilt. He knew what it meant to be mocked, to be reduced by people who once praised you. Months ago, the world had dragged his name through the mud after his ex-fiancée and best friend exposed private company secrets and made him look like a fool in the media. He had come to Lagos to disappear, to think, to heal. And now, fate had interrupted his silence with a kiss that pulled at his soul. When he finally stepped out of the restaurant, his driver held the door open, but Damien paused. "Did you see the lady I kissed?" he asked in a low voice. The driver blinked, confused. "No, sir." "Should I follow her?" Damien shook his head. Not yet. He wasn't even sure what he'd say. "Hi, I'm the man you used to fight off your shame?" No, this wasn't a business deal. This was delicate, real. So instead, he got into the car and sat in silence, replaying her trembling voice in his head. Please, pretend to kiss me. The desperation in that request wasn't just about Connell. It was deeper, like a woman who had been losing pieces of herself in silence for too long. And for reasons he couldn't explain, Damien decided he wanted to know more about her. And maybe, just maybe, give her back what life had stolen. By noon the next day, a Marcus nightmare found wings and flew straight into the claws of social media. A blurry video taken by an overexcited waiter had gone viral, showing the exact moment she kissed a complete stranger in a restaurant. The caption read, "Revenge kiss? Dumped bride spotted kissing mystery man to spite ex." Bloggers had a field day. Twitter was brutal. Memes exploded. When you pretend to be in a K-drama, but you're in Ajagunal. Sis really said, "Embarrass me? I'll embarrass myself better." The comments were ruthless, especially from women who pretended to support her, but were really celebrating her shame. Amaka stared at the video in horror, her hands trembling as she scrolled. Her phone kept buzzing. Ifeanyi kept calling, but she couldn't answer. Her mind was in chaos. That single act, born from panic, not pride, had now become the headline of her life. Again, the fallout was swift. Her clinic supervisor called her in, with a tone sharp enough to slice ego. "Amaka, this is a hospital, not Nollywood. We don't need internet celebrities who kiss strangers in public." She tried to explain. "It was just a moment, Ma. I was overwhelmed." He was just, but the words failed her. What could she even say? That she begged a stranger to save her from emotional death? That she had no one, nothing, and her ex was mocking her in public? "Go on suspension," the supervisor snapped. "Let things cool down. Patients are gossiping already." Amaka packed her things, heart shattered again. As she stepped outside, she saw a few nurses chuckling behind a phone. Her face was on the screen. Her pain had become entertainment. And still she didn't cry. Not yet. She simply walked out of the building and disappeared into the streets, carrying the weight of yet another disgrace on her back. Elsewhere, Damien watched the same video in silence, his face unreadable. His assistant, Chuka, stood nervously beside him. "Sir, do we address this? I mean, your face is not clearly seen, but the blogs are now asking who the man is." Damien didn't speak immediately. He replayed the video, pausing on the moment Amaka closed her eyes, trembling, vulnerable. "Find her," he said softly. "Not to interfere. I just want to know she's okay." Chuka raised an eyebrow. "Sir, with all due respect, you don't know this woman." Damien looked up slowly, his eyes like sharpened stone. "I know pain, Chuka, and she's drowning in it." Chuka nodded and left the room. Damien exhaled and leaned back. He didn't want to save her out of guilt or pity. He wanted to give her something the world had denied him for years, a second chance without noise, without judgment. And so, quietly, he began to dig into her name, her story, her silence, setting a plan in motion that Amaka would never see coming. 2 days later, Amaka sat in her room staring at the ceiling, her lips dry, her soul hollow. Her mother hadn't said a word to her since the suspension. She cooked for everyone except her. When she finally did speak, it was only to say, "You're cursed, Amaka. You bring shame everywhere you go." Her siblings whispered when she walked past. No man had called. No friend had offered a real shoulder. Even Ifeanyi, though supportive, was growing distant, tired of carrying Amaka's sadness like a second handbag. Then, just as she was about to delete all her social apps and vanish into obscurity, her cracked phone rang. It was a strange number. "Hello." Her voice was hoarse. "Is this Miss Amaka Nwosu?" a crisp female voice asked. "Yes," she whispered. "We're calling from the St. Philip Medical Foundation. You've been selected for a scholarship placement at our private clinic in Ikeja, a 3-month renewable contract with furnished accommodation." Amaka sat up, stunned. "Sorry, wait, what?" "I didn't apply," but the voice was calm and professional. "Your profile was nominated by an anonymous donor. We reviewed your qualifications. Your nursing license is active. You're eligible. If you're interested, come to the clinic tomorrow at 10 a.m. for orientation." The call ended before she could ask more questions. She sat there, blinking, heart racing. It had to be a scam, or a prank, or maybe someone was setting her up again. But something inside her, that quiet, stubborn fire, whispered, "Go." And so she did. The next morning, she bathed with cold water, wore her best blouse, packed her battered bag, and boarded a bus to Acadia. The clinic was real, clean, serene, well-equipped. The matron was kind. Her room was modest but private. Everything felt surreal, like a dream slipping between her fingers. She called Ifeanyi that night, voice shaking. "Ife, they gave me a job. A real one. With accommodation." Her friend screamed on the other end, laughing. "Jesus. Are you serious?" "Babe, this is God. This is breakthrough." But as Amaka ended the call, her heart trembled with quiet confusion. Who sent her name? Who nominated her? Who believed in her enough to give her this lifeline without asking for anything in return? She didn't know that at that exact moment, Damien was watching her file from his private laptop, a soft smile tugging at his lips. He didn't need her thanks. He didn't even want her to know. He just wanted her to rise, and maybe, somewhere along the way, find the woman who once begged a stranger to kiss her, not for romance, but to remind herself that she was still human. Damien sat in the back seat of his car with tinted windows, parked discreetly across the street from the St. Philip Clinic. His eyes were fixed on the entrance, but his mind was elsewhere. He didn't come here to check if Amaka was performing well. He already knew she would. Her records showed she was one of the most dependable nurses at her former clinic. He came to see something else, something deeper than professionalism, something that had been haunting him since the kiss. How does a woman carry that much pain and still show up? Still work? Still smile, even if it's broken? The door opened and Amaka stepped out, dressed in a simple blue uniform, hair tied in a modest puff. She looked like any other ordinary Nigerian woman trying to survive. But Damien saw beyond the uniform. He saw her eyes. Eyes that had known rejection, mockery, abandonment, and yet still burned with unspoken fire. The kind of fire that reminded him of himself. It had been 4 months since his world turned upside down. His ex-fiancée, Taupe, and his best friend, Charles, had leaked private documents to investors and claimed Damien mismanaged funds. Overnight, he went from being praised as Nigeria's most discreet billionaire to being dragged as a fraud in a suit. The media swirled with half-truths. Board members doubted him. Employees walked out. And for the first time in 10 years, Damien withdrew from everything. He shut down interviews, disappeared from the public, left the company under the care of legal trustees, and came to Lagos, hoping to breathe. But peace never came. Until her. That day in the restaurant, when Amaka begged him to kiss her, he felt something shift. A connection without words. Not romantic yet, but painfully real. It was the first time in months someone had touched him without knowing who he was. She didn't want his name, his money, or his status. She wanted something pure, something desperate. And so, every 2 or 3 days, Damien visited the clinic, sometimes disguised as a patient, sometimes just watching from afar. Amaka never noticed. Or maybe she did, and chose not to speak. Either way, he respected her space. He never interfered. He donated supplies through a shell charity and ensured her salary was paid ahead of time. His assistant, Chuka, kept warning him, "You're getting too involved." But Damien wasn't trying to possess her. He was trying to protect her. From the world. From vultures like Kunnel. From herself. He knew this couldn't last. At some point, she'd recognize him. Or someone would blow his cover. But for now, he was content watching her rebuild, quietly from a distance. Because sometimes, the only way to love someone is silently. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Amaka had just closed from her shift. The weather was hot, the kind of Lagos heat that melts body cream and patience at the same time. She decided to stop at the Ojuoi market to pick up tomatoes, onions, and a small piece of goat meat for stew. Her stipend from the clinic was decent, but she was still cautious with money. As she walked through the rows of traders shouting prices, a familiar voice sliced through the crowd like a bad omen. "So this is where they sent you to hide?" She turned, and there he was. Connell, dressed in a designer polo, holding hands with his fiancée, the same woman who replaced her. Amaka froze, her plastic bag trembling in her grip. You think you can go viral, kiss some random man, and become a celebrity nurse? Connell sneered. You're still the same Ajagunal girl. Cheap. Desperate. People began to gather. Market women turned to watch. Some even brought out phones, sensing drama. The fiancée folded her arms, smirking. I told you she'd be buying pepper like the rest of them. That kiss didn't give her class. The shame hit Amaka like hot oil. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Connell took a step closer. Tell me, do you think that man even likes you? Or was it just pity? Before she could respond, a calm but commanding voice spoke from behind them. Excuse me, is this man bothering you? The crowd turned. Damien stood there in plain clothes, nothing flashy, just a fitted shirt and black jeans. But the confidence in his stance, the quiet authority in his tone, silenced everyone. Amaka blinked, stunned. You again? Connell scoffed. What, you're her bodyguard now? Damien stepped forward, his eyes like cold steel. I don't raise my voice in public. But I promise you, if you disrespect her again, you'll leave here in more than one viral video. The crowd murmured. Connell, clearly shaken, muttered something under his breath and dragged his fiancée away. Amaka stood still, stunned, clutching her bag of tomatoes like it held her entire life. Damien turned to her gently. Are you okay? She nodded slowly, the tears threatening to spill. He walked her out of the market, not saying much, just walking beside her. She finally looked up. Why were you there? She asked. He smiled faintly. Let's just say, I have a habit of being where I'm needed. She wanted to question it, but she was too tired, too broken. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe, not because he was rich or strong or handsome, but because he treated her like she mattered, like she wasn't something to laugh at. And that feeling was rarer than gold. That night, as the city lights flickered through her clinic apartment window, Amaka lay on her small bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart beat differently now, not with fear, but with confusion. Who was this man? Why was he helping her? And why did his presence quiet the noise inside her mind? She picked up her phone and stared at the number he had scribbled on a napkin before walking away at the market. No name, just a number. After what felt like a lifetime, she typed a message. Thank you for today. I don't know what to say. I'm still shaken. But thank you. She hesitated, then hit send. 5 minutes later, her phone lit up. You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself peace. I just helped remind you it exists. Her fingers hovered. Then she typed back. Who are you really? The reply came quickly. A friend. Maybe more if life allows. And that was how it began. Night after night, they exchanged messages. Sometimes short, sometimes long. Sometimes Amaka ranted about her mother. Sometimes she asked deep questions. Have you ever felt like you're too broken for love? He always answered calmly, never too much, never too little. He never told her his full name. She never asked again. She liked the mystery. She liked the safety. There was something healing about not knowing who he truly was, about being known, seen, respected, without her scars needing to be explained. He never flirted. Never crossed the line. He listened. He encouraged. He reminded her of her own strength. And slowly, unknowingly, Amaka began to laugh again. She began to smile, not for people, not for likes or validation, but for herself. She didn't know it yet, but she was falling. Not for the man in the suit, not for the stranger in the restaurant, but for the quiet voice behind the screen. The one who never made her feel small. The one who didn't judge her for her past. The one who reminded her every night that she was not invisible. Meanwhile, Damien sat in his apartment, staring at her messages, feeling a strange warmth return to his chest. He didn't plan to fall either. He just wanted to help her breathe. But now he was drowning in her silence, her softness, her resilience. And even though he knew that the truth of his identity could destroy everything, he also knew that some loves are born in shadows, but meant to survive the light. The clinic had always been a modest but peaceful place, clean white walls, small waiting benches, a sharp smell of disinfectant that clung to the air. Amaka was beginning to find comfort in its routine. She took pride in arriving early, caring for patients, folding linen, and keeping things in order. For once, her life felt stable, not magical, not luxurious, but stable. That morning had started like every other. She had administered morning injections, helped a pregnant woman to the restroom, and was preparing the sterilizer when the power suddenly flickered. The generator hadn't kicked in. Then came the smoke. At first it was faint, curling from under the storage room door. Then, in seconds, black clouds rolled through the hallway. Panic erupted. Nurses screamed. Patients coughed. The smell of burning chemicals filled the air like war gas. And just like that, chaos swallowed the building. Amaka didn't think twice. She shoved the alarm, grabbed the nearest patient, a crying toddler, and pushed her outside. Then she ran back inside. "Is there anyone left?" she shouted, wrapping a wet cloth over her nose. Someone screamed from the maternity room. A young girl in labor, abandoned in the smoke. Without hesitation, Amaka plunged in. She tied a cloth around the girl's face and helped her limp through the corridor, flames licking the ceiling above them. They barely made it out. Firefighters arrived 10 minutes later. By then, half the clinic was gone. But no one died. No casualties. And everyone, from staff to patients, agreed on one thing. Amaka saved lives that day. She had acted without hesitation. No cameras. No praise. Just instinct. Pure, selfless instinct. By evening, the news had spread. A few online blogs caught the story, calling her the brave nurse. Pictures of her soot-covered face went viral, a stark contrast to the old video of her restaurant kiss. People began calling her a heroine. Even her mother, who hadn't spoken in days, sent a voice note saying, "I hear you save people. May God remember you for good." That message made Amaka cry more than the fire. Damien, who had rushed to the scene the moment his assistant Chuka informed him, watched from his car as Amaka stood under a tree, drenched in sweat and ash, helping a woman into a waiting taxi. He didn't approach. Not yet. He simply watched, his throat tightening. There she was, this woman who had been mocked, ridiculed, and thrown away, standing in ash and smoke, but holding herself like a queen. Not the type with diamonds, but the type born in fire. 2 days after the fire, the sky over Lagos was a gray blanket threatening to spill. Damien finally reached out, sending Amaka a message. "Dinner? Somewhere quiet. No pressure." She hesitated, then replied, "Just dinner. Nothing more." They met at a hidden bistro in Surulere. No chandeliers or soft jazz, just quiet tables, warm food, and a roof that creaked whenever the rain started. She wore a navy blue gown, simple, hugging her like grace. He wore a plain shirt, the kind that didn't scream wealth. He stood as she entered, pulled out her chair, and didn't mention the fire. She appreciated that. No one had treated her like a person lately, only as either a viral joke or a public savior. But Damien looked at her like she was just her. A woman, not a symbol, not a victim, just Amaka. They ate slowly, talked about random things. Growing up, their love for Umla, the foolishness of Lagos Danfo drivers. She laughed when he imitated one shouting Oja Legba, straight, with wide eyes and hand gestures. Then the conversation turned quiet. She stared at her plate. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked. "I mean, who just shows up like this in someone's life?" Damien's voice was soft. "Maybe someone who understands what it means to be broken in silence." She looked up. Their eyes met. There were no games in his. No pressure. Just presence. She told him about her wedding day. About Cunnel. About the shame. About crying on cold bathroom floors. He didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. The way broken people listen when they know the weight of unspoken things. By the time they stepped outside, the rain had begun. Not thunderous. Just a soft drizzle that kissed the city like a mother mourning her child. Amaka stepped into the open without an umbrella, letting the rain wash over her wig, her shoulders, her skin. I feel clean, she said softly. Damien walked beside her. You are. For a moment, she wanted to hold his hand. She didn't. Instead, she looked at him and whispered, I still don't know who you are. He smiled faintly. Does it matter yet? She wanted to say yes. But instead, she looked away. Deep down, she knew the truth. It didn't matter who he was. It mattered who she was becoming. Because of him. Connell scrolled through his phone one afternoon while seated at his fiancée's family compound, sipping malt and pretending to be interested in wedding planning. Then he saw it, a blog post titled, From Viral Kiss to Quiet Dinner. Mystery nurse spotted again with same man. He clicked. The photo was grainy, but he recognized Amaka. She looked different now, less broken, more graceful. And beside her, that same man from the restaurant. Something twisted in Connell's gut. It wasn't jealousy. It was possession. Amaka was the woman he had discarded like worn slippers, and now she was rising without his permission. He threw the phone across the room. His fiancée raised her brow. What's your problem? He didn't answer. He couldn't. All he could think about was finding out who this man was, and ending whatever it was before it bloomed. Within 2 days, he contacted a friend in the blog industry. Find out who the man is, he growled. But it wasn't easy. Damien had moved with intentional silence. His real name wasn't even on Amaka's clinic records. He paid for everything through middlemen. No photos, no tags. Frustrated, Connell decided to attack the only thing he could, Amaka's name. He dug up the restaurant video and sent it to major gossip pages with the caption, Desperate ex, still selling herself. Same girl, different men. Within hours, the blogs reposted it. Social media exploded again. This one no-day rest. She kissed one man last week, now another? Or is it the same man pretending to be two? The comments were cruel. Amaka saw the video trend again. Her hands trembled. She didn't cry. But the pain returned, sharp, humiliating, deep. That night, she received a message from Damien. Ignore the noise. You're more than people's small minds. She replied, I'm tired. I'm really, really tired. 10 minutes later, someone knocked on her door. It was him. In the rain. Again. She opened the door, eyes red. You came here. He nodded. You shouldn't be alone tonight. She broke down. For the first time in months, she wept in someone's arms. Not because she was weak, but because someone made it safe to. As he held her close, Damien whispered, They tried to break you again. But look, you're still standing. And in that moment, Amaka didn't care who he was, or where he came from. She just knew that for once, someone saw her, not as a headline, not as a scandal, but as a woman worth protecting. Amaka returned home to Adjagunal for the weekend, not because she missed it, but because her mother had insisted. You think your life is better now? You can't even visit your own mother, the voice note had said. She arrived quietly with a small bag of groceries and 10,000 Nigerian nairas tucked into her wrapper. Her mother didn't welcome her with a hug or even a smile. Instead, the moment she stepped into the compound, Mama Nwosu exploded. So you started sleeping with rich men, ABI? And Amaka. After disgracing us online, you now have sugar daddies buying you jobs and new clothes. Is that why you refused to marry Connell? The neighbors heard. They always did. Heads poked from windows. A few laughed. Her younger sister, Adeobi, rolled her eyes, whispering, Madam Trending Nurse is back. Amaka stood still, tears burning her throat. Mama, I got this job on merit. And that man, he's not what you think. But Mama wasn't done. You now wear fine gowns and come home with pride. Shameless girl. If your father were alive, he would have beaten that Jezebel spirit out of you. The words pierced Amaka like hot iron. She had endured her mother's sharp tongue all her life. But this was different. This was venomous. Deliberate. Spiteful. She had come to show appreciation, to give back, despite all she had been through. And yet here was the same woman who watched her fall, now accusing her of rising the wrong way. Mama, why do you hate me so much? She asked, her voice barely audible. What have I ever done to you to deserve this? Her mother laughed bitterly. Hate you? I carried you for 9 months and watched you become nothing but a viral disgrace. You think because one man is buying you umla and texting you at night, you're now a queen. She flung the 10,000 Nigerian nairas on the ground. Take your prostitute money and go. My hands are clean. Amaka knelt and picked the money, not out of shame, but out of sorrow. She placed it gently on the center table and walked out. She didn't look back. If she did, she would have shattered again. That night, back in her apartment, she broke down completely. Her hands trembled as she washed her face. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. And then, without thinking, she messaged Damien. I wish you didn't know me. I ruin everything I touch. Within minutes, he called. Amaka, he said gently. You don't ruin things. You endure them. You carry people's curses and still feed them. You wear their shame and still clothe them with your grace. That's not ruin. That's strength. She didn't reply, but she didn't hang up either. For the next 20 minutes, he just stayed on the phone. No pressure. No promises. Just presence. And for the first time, Amaka realized that maybe, just maybe, the worst kind of betrayal wasn't from a man, but from a mother who forgot how to love. It started innocently. Amaka was in the break room at the clinic during lunch, scrolling her phone while sipping cold water. Her colleague, Uchechi, came in and threw a newspaper on the table. See your boyfriend, oh. Big man hiding in small places, she teased. Amaka blinked. What? Uchechi turned the paper toward her. It was an article from Business Weekly Nigeria. The headline read, Okonkwo Holdings CEO returns quietly amid legal win over former partners. Below was a sharp high-resolution image of Damien, wearing the same gentle smile, the same short beard, the same eyes that held her when she cried. The water dropped from Amaka's hand. Her throat dried. Her heart stopped. She stared at the page, frozen. Are you okay? Uchechi asked, unaware. Amaka didn't respond. She picked up her bag and walked out of the clinic. The world had tilted beneath her. Back in her apartment, she slammed the door shut, her breath coming in ragged bursts. She pulled up the article online. There he was. Damien Okonkwo, billionaire tech founder, silent investor in multiple medical centers. The same Damien who had saved her from Connell's mockery. The same man who sent gentle texts and showed up in the rain. The same man who never told her this. The betrayal wasn't just that he was rich. It was that he hid it, lied by omission, made her open up while staying closed. She felt foolish, used, a charity case. Everything now felt like a performance. The job, the apartment, the meals, all orchestrated, like a chessboard, and she was just the grateful pawn. Why didn't he tell me? She whispered to herself. Why didn't he think I deserved to know? The hurt wasn't pride. It was the crack in something she thought was real. She didn't cry. She didn't text him. She just sat in silence, staring at the wall, replaying every moment they had shared. Every word now sounded scripted. Every gesture looked staged. Even the night he held her after the blog repost felt rehearsed in hindsight. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Damien's name lit up her phone screen. She didn't pick up. He called again. Then he sent a message. I know you've seen it. Please let me explain. She didn't reply. What was there to explain? That he watched her suffer when he could have spoken the truth? That he let her mother drag her for being with a nobody when he was a billionaire? That he stood in her life pretending to be a friend, while hiding behind the very wealth that nearly destroyed her. That night, Amaka blocked his number, deleted their chats, and curled up on the floor of her small apartment like a child abandoned in a storm. The kiss had started this story, but the silence would end it. The following week, Amaka didn't show up at work. She called in sick, but everyone could tell something was wrong. She stopped answering Ifunanya's messages. She deactivated all her social media accounts. She didn't cry, not this time. It was worse than tears. It was numbness, a cold, detached silence that spread through her soul like fog in a forest. She cooked food but didn't eat. She swept floors that weren't dirty. She stared at her old wedding boxes, still under the bed, still unopened. Damien's voice played in her head like a lullaby and a betrayal at the same time. You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself peace. I just want you to rise. She had risen, but now she was falling again. Only this time, she chose to walk away before the pain chose her. Damien, on the other hand, was restless. He had sent her letters, flowers, even had Chuka try to drop off a message at the clinic. Nothing. No response. He didn't care about the media now. He didn't care about his board. All he cared about was finding the woman whose pain had reminded him of his own. The woman who once said, "I feel clean in the rain." The woman who had become his calm. But he had broken the one thing she valued most, honesty. She hadn't asked him for money, or fame, or power. She had only asked for truth. And he, in all his wisdom, withheld it. Not out of malice, but fear, the fear that if she knew, she would change, that she would treat him like the others. But by hiding it, he became the very thing she was running from. And now she was gone. One afternoon, he sat in his car parked near her street, watching the compound from afar. She came out once, to dump her fuse. She looked thinner, her eyes duller, but her shoulders were still upright. He wanted to run to her, to kneel, to beg. But he knew she wasn't the kind of woman who fell for flowers and apologies. She needed more. And for the first time, the billionaire who had built empires realized he didn't know how to fix what he'd broken with just wealth. He needed time. And time, in love, is both a healer and a thief. It began with a call from a neighbor in Adjagunal. The voice was panicked, breathless. "Your mama don fall. Her mouth don bend one side. She dey shout, but we no understand her words." Amaka, who hadn't left her apartment in days, froze. She dropped the phone mid-conversation and dashed outside, barefoot, with her wrapper barely tied. By the time she got to the government clinic near her mother's house, Mama Nwosu was already on oxygen, one side of her face drooping, eyes filled with fear and confusion. She looked up and tried to speak, but her tongue curled sideways, unintelligible. Amaka's hands trembled as she signed forms. Her siblings hovered around uselessly. Adaobi wept loudly, more for attention than grief. "Amaka, do something," they all shouted. But Amaka had nothing, no savings, no car, no influence. Only fear. Crippling, suffocating fear. The attending doctor pulled her aside and spoke bluntly. "It's a stroke. A serious one. If you want her to survive, she needs private care. MRI. Monitoring. The total cost is over 2 million naira." Amaka's world began to spin. She sat down slowly, gripping her knees. 2 million? She couldn't even afford 20,000. She called people, begged friends, texted old classmates. Most read her message and ignored it. Others replied with "God will do it." Ifeanyi offered 50,000 Nigerian nairas, crying as she said it. Amaka sold her phone, then her necklace. She paced the hospital hallway like a ghost, whispering prayers into the silence. That night, as she sat by her mother's bedside and listened to her labored breathing, guilt clawed at her like a beast. Yes, her mother had been cruel, but she was still her mother. The same woman who once stayed up grinding agbono at midnight just to feed her. The same woman who carried her to the hospital on her back when she was 5. "Please don't die," Amaka whispered, clutching the old woman's palm. "Please wait, let me find a way." The next morning, Amaka rushed back to the hospital with a borrowed phone, planning to beg the doctors for more time. But something was different. The nurses were friendlier. Her mother had been moved to a private wing. An 4 machine beeped beside the bed. A tray of clean food had been placed on a table. Confused, Amaka approached the nurse. "Excuse me, who paid for this?" The woman smiled. "Anonymous payment. Cleared in full. For 2 weeks." Amaka's heart dropped. She turned, dazed, staring at the sterile walls like they held answers. She didn't need to ask. Deep down, she already knew who it was. Damien. Again. Quietly. No fanfare. No message. No apology. Just action. And for the first time since she blocked him, Amaka felt something break inside her. Not pride, not anger, but the last barrier between her wounded heart and the truth. The man she ran from was the one person who never stopped fighting for her, even in silence. When Kunnel heard the news of Mama Nwosu's hospitalization and saw Amaka trending online again, this time for her bravery in caring for her sick mother, he saw an opportunity. A twisted one. You see, he told his friends in a barbershop, the girl still needs a man who can protect her. All this mystery man thing? She needs someone real. His fiancée had recently dumped him after finding texts between him and other women. Karma, it seemed, had done its work. But Kunnel, never one to accept defeat, decided to reclaim what he believed was still his. He called the press, rented a camera crew, and with the help of one of Amaka's old friends, tracked her down to the church where she had gone to pray. Outside the entrance, with a velvet box and a microphone, Kunnel got down on one knee, surrounded by flashing cameras and surprised onlookers. Amaka Nwosu, he announced, you've always been the one. I made a mistake, but I'm here now. Marry me. Amaka stood at the church entrance, stunned. Her eyes widened as she recognized him. The same man who abandoned her on her wedding day. The same man who mocked her in restaurants and tried to destroy her online. And now he was kneeling, not in love, but for clout. She scanned the crowd, reporters, influencers, onlookers, whispering and filming. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and smiled. Kunnel, she said gently, do you remember what you said the day you dumped me? You said I was a mistake, that I wasn't good enough for your ambition. He tried to interrupt. She raised a hand. Well, today, I'm saying the same thing. You're the mistake I survived. Then, she turned to the cameras. Let this go viral. And with that, she walked away, leaving Kunnel humiliated before 1,000 lenses. The applause that followed wasn't just for rejection. It was for dignity, for a woman who chose herself in front of the whole world. Later that night, in the privacy of her clinic room, Amaka sat quietly, her phone buzzing with messages. She ignored them all, except one, from a hidden number. A simple message. I saw the video. You didn't just walk away from him. You walked into yourself. She didn't need a name. She knew. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. So much pain, so much history, and yet a soft warmth grew in her chest. She remembered Damien's voice, his presence, his silence. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe some stories are paused, not ended. She pressed her phone against her chest, eyes glistening. For the first time in weeks, she whispered his name aloud, not in anger, not in fear, but in longing. Damien. The letter came 3 days later. No flowers, no perfume, just a brown envelope slipped under her door with her name written in a man's quiet handwriting. Amaka found it on her way in from a hospital visit to her mother. She sat on her bed and stared at it for minutes before opening it. Her fingers shook as she unfolded the paper. It wasn't typed. It wasn't dramatic. Just ink on paper. Real, raw human. Dear Amaka, the day you asked me to kiss you, I thought I was helping you. I didn't realize you were the one saving me. I was lost too, hiding behind silence, behind wealth, behind a name that no longer brought me peace. But your eyes pulled me out of that cave. Your voice reminded me what it means to feel. I hid who I was not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I didn't want to lose the one person who looked at me without fear, without greed, without calculation. You gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Honesty. And I betrayed it by not trusting you with the truth. So I'm letting go. Not because I want to, but because maybe you need space to find yourself without me haunting your every step. If fate still believes in us, we'll meet again. And if we don't, thank you for being the woman who taught me that love doesn't always come wrapped in flowers. Sometimes it comes in fire, and rain, and silence. Damien. The tears came soft and slow. She didn't sob. She didn't wail. She just let them fall, one by one, onto the paper. She read the letter again, and again, each word a bomb, each sentence a mirror. He wasn't begging. He wasn't manipulating. He was giving her what no man ever had. Respect. Even in heartbreak. Even in absence. The weight of his absence filled the room like a living thing. She touched her chest and whispered, I forgive you. Not because he asked, but because holding on to pain would only delay the healing she now deserved. The kind of healing that leads not to perfection, but to peace. The air was thick with Lagos humidity as Amaka rushed through the terminal entrance of Murtala Muhammad International Airport. Her chest heaved. Her eyes darted through crowds of travelers and blinking flight boards. She had never been inside an airport before, not even for someone else's flight, and now here she was, barefoot in spirit, drenched in sweat, searching for a man whose absence had made her realize how deeply she had grown to love him. Her friend Ifeanyi had burst into her clinic 2 hours ago, phone in hand, breathless. "He's leaving, Amaka. Your billionaire ghost." Someone saw him at the first-class lounge boarding for London. This is it. And just like that, the silence she had nursed for weeks shattered. Amaka didn't change clothes. She didn't think. She simply ran. Into traffic. Into Okadas. Into fate. The airport was a blur of noise. Flight announcements, trolley wheels, crying babies, men in suits. She pushed past them all, fueled by something deeper than pride or desperation. Love without pretense. Love that didn't come with roses, but with letters written in regret. Finally, just as security prepared to block off the VIP gate, she saw him. Damien. Standing in line. Black duffel bag across his shoulder, passport in hand, posture calm. As if nothing had happened. But his eyes, they looked hollow. Amaka didn't shout his name at first. She froze. Her heart pounded like thunder in her ears. Was this the right thing to do? Would he turn? Would he reject her? But then he glanced over his shoulder, and their eyes met. In that instant, every barrier collapsed. "Damien," she called, finally, her voice cracking. He turned fully now, stunned. She walked toward him, fast, then slower. "Don't go," she said, breathless. "Not like this. Not with unfinished words between us." He took a step forward. "Amaka," but she raised her hand. "Let me talk," she said, eyes wet. "You didn't break me. You saved me. Even in your silence, even in your wealth, I see you. And I was scared because I thought you were pretending. But now I know you were hiding just like me. And we're both tired of hiding." The crowd began to watch. Phones lifted. People recorded. But neither of them cared. Damien dropped his bag slowly. He reached for her hand. And she didn't flinch. "I came here thinking I was leaving behind a broken heart," he whispered. "But I think I was about to leave my whole life behind." She smiled through tears. "Then stay. Not as a billionaire. Not as a savior. Just as you." It didn't start with a speech. It didn't end with a crowd cheering. In that soft silence between airport noise and human ache, Amaka reached up and cupped Damien's face. "No pretending this time," she whispered, voice shaking. "Kiss me for real." And he did. Not the kiss of lust or even of apology, but the kiss of recognition. Of two broken souls who had found in each other not escape, but home. His hands wrapped around her gently, like she was something sacred. Her tears touched his lips. Her past melted into his breath. And all the cameras, all the whispers, all the public attention disappeared. In that moment, it was just them. Two people who had met at the edge of disgrace and found grace in one another. The weeks that followed didn't rush. Damien didn't propose immediately. He didn't whisk her away in jets or flood her with gold. Instead, he visited Mama Nwosu in the hospital every weekend, sitting silently, helping her sip pap and reading the Bible aloud when she slept. Amaka watched from the hallway, tears in her throat. Her mother couldn't speak yet, but she understood. She squeezed Amaka's hand one afternoon and tried to smile, for the first time since the stroke. Slowly, Amaka moved in with Damien, not to his mansion, but to a modest apartment in Surrey that they both furnished together. They shared chores. They shared therapy. They didn't post anything online. No ring yet. No engagement photos. Just healing. Just truth. 6 months later, at a small family compound in Anambra, under the shade of mango trees, Amaka wore a simple ivory lace with coral beads on her wrist. Damien wore a white native outfit and smiled like a man who had found his rhythm again. No celebrities. No politicians. Just close friends, a local band, hot jollof, and the smell of palm wine in the air. Mama Nwosu sat in a wheelchair, clapping softly. Ifeananya danced like a mad woman. And Amaka? She stood beside Damien, eyes clear, heart full. You know, she whispered during their first dance, the kiss that saved me was never about you. It was about me finally choosing to stop being invisible. Damien smiled. And now? She leaned closer. Now, I'm kissing you, because I want to build something real. They kissed again. This time, not out of fear, not out of shame, but out of love, the kind that grows not in perfection, but in survival. Thank you for watching this video. What did you learn from this story? Drop it in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel Tochi Stories for more.